I stay bout it, I'm not pouting. Break through walls and climb it mountains. If you want it, scream it loud and show this world what they've been doubting. Never waiting on the world to catch up to me. Leave it in the rear view. I wish that it was up to me. The world would never fear new.
Welcome back to the Braintainment Show, guys. Good to have you back for another episode. Today I'm chatting with the legend, Tommy Kerr, former pro rugby player, fitness enthusiast, and now breathwork facilitator, and the owner of Liqueur Wellness. So we've got a bit to get through. We're just chatting off air about some of the exciting stuff I want to get into. So, mate, let's rip in. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I'm super keen to talk about some breath work and also some sports recovery stuff that I do through my business down in Kerr South called Liqueur Wellness. So I'll let you fire away.
Awesome, mate. Well, I came across you. Shout out to Katie Williams for connecting us. Came across you on her show, mate, and you're talking a lot about breath work. And admittedly, this is just something that I'm just starting to dip my toe into. I love the cold therapy approach. We'll talk about in a sec as well. But I'm just getting started in this world of breathwork, and man, holy fuck, some of the differences it's made for me in a short period of time. And I know you've got your own story. We'll talk a bit about the intricacies of exactly what it looks like, I suppose, in a sec. But what's your background, just to set the scene, with breathwork and the Wim Hof Method specifically as well?
Yeah, okay. So, look, my background comes from an accident that I had back in 2014, I think it was. Nearly, we're getting up there, aren't we? So I had a car crash, and unfortunately, the circumstances led to quite a serious matter, and it made me reevaluate my life situation. And I guess from that, I kind of got myself more grounded into self-realization and I would say, a sense of wanting to, I guess, unwrap a few things that I'd maybe experienced as a kid, or even, past childhood trauma, or even, I had a really serious knee injury when I was younger, and that unfortunately halted my career as a rugby league player. I think a number of things kind of snowballed to the end, and I ended up on quite a serious matter where I did fall asleep at the wheel. I wasn't drunk or on any illicit drugs. It was just the fact that kind of just more negligence on my part. I'd worked a long shift and probably shouldn't have been driving. And I actually spent a couple of years on antidepressants as well, and decided to get off those. So it was a combination of things that really just led to the events that unfolded. And I kind of didn't go down the appropriate path of getting the professional guidance on how powerful these medications can be on the brain. So I was suffering from, withdrawals and brain shocks and things that, are quite common when you do remove yourself quite quickly from these medications. And basically, I just didn't feel normal while I was on them. So I just wanted to remove myself, and I got into more natural therapies, ways of just, instilling more balance and, getting myself into a state where I could remove myself. And I thought I could, from the medication. And unfortunately, the events that unfolded, did lead to my incarceration. But that time there was very powerful for me in the sense that it gave me a lot of time to sit with myself and filter out a lot of things that I'd suppressed. And it was a very awakening experience too, just to see the other side of how some people live, and also to it's not an easy environment to be in. So I did a lot of work on myself in there. I've also transitioned that out through different ways of dealing with current stresses and everyday stresses. and basically it's a work in progress. So, you know,
it's for all of us, isn't it?
For all of us. And like, I'm always, you know, learning more about myself, you know, each day. And also too, when times come where, you know, it might be a unexpected life change, or it might be a loss in the family, or whatever, might be financial pressure, whatever it is, you know, business related stuff. It's a work in progress to see what triggers you. And I guess, you know, maintaining a practice such as breathwork, more in particular, the Wim Hof is what I aligned myself with. I've done other sessions as well, holotropic breathwork, which is very deep and powerful experience. And it is a trauma release or emotional release activity. Or
how did you come across
practice.
this in the first place? Was this something you were kind of looking for? You mentioned that you're looking for some natural approaches to remedy how you were feeling at the time. Was it almost by happenstance that you kind of stumbled across the idea of breath work, and then was that sort of immediate benefits? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. So it was just a thing where, you know, I dived deep into meditation and other practices, and a lot of them didn't stick with me. But I went from like 10-day Vipassanas, like silent meditation retreats, and I found that very hard to manage on a regular basis, because it's not 10 hours every day after you leave, but that's kind of, the teachings are quite intense. And I left there, and I think after about 2 weeks, I'd kind of lost the practice, because you get reconditioned to your environment, and, you know, things start to creep back into your world, such as work and, you know, relationships and different things that, you know, can kind of sway your way. And time is everything, time management, you know. So I found myself, because I love to train, I love to, like, physical exercise is a major part of why I, you know, of what I utilize for keeping my mental health intact. And I guess, you know, putting aside an hour in the morning and an hour in the night seemed although too much. And this is how, you know, I'd come across Wim Hof, you know, much earlier during these like learning about these practices. And I went to an event, and I was really taken back by it, but I didn't really embody it, and I didn't really apply it to my practice, because I was doing different forms of meditation already. And I guess it wasn't until I had that realization of time as well, and what works physiologically for me, that's where breath work came in, because essentially like 15, 20 minutes in the morning is all you need. Transcendental meditation is another one. And, you know, that's really the same practice, like same time duration. Sorry, it's about 20 minutes in the morning, 20 at night. So I was always just looking at time effective ways to really just, you know, keep myself in alignment, but also to what just worked for me. And breathwork is definitely one thing where I do have these huge emotional releases and shifts. And, you know, I feel like, you know, breathing, you know, it's the easiest, most instrumental part of the autonomic nervous system. So, you know, it's the most easiest that we can control and navigate. And I guess essentially, you know, dropping us from a stressful situation where we go into the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic, that's a big advantage to what the Wim Hof breathwork teaches and what it instills in the body. So,
do you think a lot of people get stuck in that sympathetic nervous system in terms of whether it's stresses from work or relationships and that fight or flight? I know I found it hard at times to transition out of that. It sounds like for you, you've had success through this method, through the breathing techniques, to almost use that as like an anchor point, is what I'm hearing, to just allow you to find more of that calm and creative state. Is that sort of what you're getting at there?
Yeah, like definitely. And, you know, I feel like I don't practice it regularly at night because it can oxygenate the blood. I can charge the body up. So essentially, you know, you don't want to be laying there at wide awake at night, just filled with energy. So I guess morning's like the best time to do it, and the afternoon.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to, like, consistency is everything, you know, and commitment is one of Wim's pillars. It's, you know, it's breathing, it's the cold therapy, and it's commitment to both. So essentially, you know, if we commit to it, which, you know, and I'll put my hand up, man, like literally went through a bit of a hard time myself last year, back end of 2020. We all pretty much had a pretty hectic year, but I think I transitioned through a lot of huge life changes. And, you know, I found myself, you know, not consistent, and it did affect my mind and my mental health. So I've really just realigned to it over the past couple of months, and it's completely like shifted my body, my self-awareness. You know, I'm becoming, I'm like falling back into a place of, you know, self-realization and actualization where I was when I was committed to this practice. That aligned with the cold therapy, like legit breath work in the morning followed by a cold shower. And you can essentially build up your resiliency towards the cold as well. You know, we do release a chemical hormone in the body called norepinephrine as well. So it's important to get the back of your neck under the ice or under the cold water. And, you know, this is, you know, a great thing for healing and also too for energy. And I guess, like, you know, overall with breath work, a lot of people do get confused about the method. We want to be breathing through our nose. So our nose is like obviously connected to the diaphragm. This is where we suppress a lot of our emotions. So we store a lot of emotions in the stomach. That's why a lot of people have stomach pain, stomach cramps and stuff, you know, that's related to stress. And I guess, you know, the actual process of Wim Hof is in through the nose and out through the mouth, but there are other exercises too, like power breathing exercises that Wim teaches, which is through the nose, out through the nose.
Right. Okay.
And it's more of an aggressive style. And rebirthing is also a technique too, which, you know, is huge emotional releases. Like if you've got emotional pain stored in the body, you're going to release it.
So what would that look like? So I'd love to dive a little further. So let's maybe if we could explore, say, 2 examples. This first one we'll start with for someone who's listening, tuning in, who maybe can relate immediately as soon as you said that, in terms of the emotional stress being held a lot in the stomach and the diaphragm. So if they're wanting to clear some of that and find that release, what would that breath work look like exactly? How do they start that process?
I would not recommend, a facilitator to do the holotropic breath work, unless you have had quite, you know, a significant amount of time doing this practice. You would need to find a facilitator, and we can link, you know, I can link people in for that. Essentially, it usually goes for about an hour. Oh, wow. So it's quite intense, and it's, as I said, it's quite an aggressive form of breath work, but you have these, you know, huge emotional releases. You have physiological changes in the body. You know, you might experience shaking, trembling, hands might claw up.
I think I've heard Wim talk about that. And yeah, it sounds, I haven't done that, but it sounds super interesting. For the folks perhaps then on like a daily morning basis that want that extra energy we're talking about. So I do my cold showers every day. I fucking love them. It's my jam. And then, but yeah, like I touched on earlier, the breath work, probably not so much. So if I or anyone listening were to start a practice there, just to kind of dip our toe in, what would that look like for us?
Yeah, the Wim Hof Method. So essentially, if you want me to talk about the actual practice and how okay. So I usually lie down and I just make myself comfortable, palms facing up, legs not crossed, head not tilted too far back. and from there, I essentially just take, 3 deep breaths in and out, and just through the belly. So what we want to do is we want to push up through the pelvic floor into our core. So it's like, if you could imagine like blowing up a balloon. Okay, so make a big balloon out of your stomach. And then you're kind of going through a 3-part method. So you're blowing up through the balloon into the stomach, rising it up through the chest and out through the mouth. It's in through the nose and it's releasing through the mouth. So the first inhale is quite aggressive. So it's a big breath in, and the exhale is sort of less forcefully. So essentially you're running through 30 to 40 breath counts of this, okay? Exertion through the mouth, and then you're essentially, after that 30 or 40th breath, you're going to exhale all the air out of the lungs, out of the stomach, and this is where you're going to do the breath holds. So I don't know if you know much about the breath holds.
A little bit. And I've heard you talk about keeping a score and an account, and that, I really like the sound of that.
Yeah, I mean, like, you make it a game too, like, because you want to, like everything, you want progression. And, it's like people that wear Fitbits and Apple Watches and stuff, and they're tracking their steps and you want the progression. People want data. They want feedback. So, I guess, this is just a way of just, that natural form of progression. And yeah, you can time your breath hold. So I usually go between a minute to 90 seconds. Let's say I'm doing 4 rounds. I'll do 3 rounds consistent at the same breath hold. The retention breath is around 10 seconds. You release everything out and you keep going. But on the last breath hold, I just time myself to see how long I can go. And yeah, I've had some pretty good scores actually.
I bet you have.
There's a guy named Patrick McEwen, and he wrote the book called The Oxygen Advantage, and it goes deep into like mouth taping, CO2 buildup, which lowering the oxygen levels and raising your CO2 levels, and the amount of energy that you can create from that. So that'll be interesting. Maybe if you want to talk about that on a second podcast.
Absolutely, mate. There's so much to dive into. I reckon I could just rip on this for hours on end, just have a glass of red and then dive into my breathwork.
Yeah, man. And there's so many different forms of breathwork too, and for different purposes, Yeah. And I guess, all in all, you got to find what works for you. And this is what I've found really does work for me, as I said, like involuntary influences the autonomic nervous system. It strengthens the immune system. It can influence your blood circulation as well. So,
wow.
There are many benefits from doing the Wim Hof Method. And yeah, I've found, the energy that I get from what I create from doing this in the morning is invaluable. So it's better than having a cup of coffee, put it that way.
I feel like that's arguably one of the biggest challenges people are trying to solve when they're, looking to the world of self-optimization and things of that nature is to create more energy, right? I feel like it's
definitely.
It's like the biggest problem people are trying to solve. And I know I can relate to that at times. So I think that's what I like about what we're talking about here. And I like that you touched on it there a couple of times about you're just trying to adapt to what actually works for you. And some of those physiological benefits that you listed there, it's a pretty appealing encouragement to at least start trialing this stuff. So for everyone listening, I really challenge you guys and encourage you guys to just dive further into Tom's work, obviously dive into Wim stuff, and connect with Tom a bit further if you have any questions or want more information. But it's certainly worth exploring over the next week or two, just to see what it does to energy levels, even just to calm the mind and sort of show up in a more productive way. And like we spoke about earlier, I know so many of us just operate from that sympathetic nervous system of like out of habit, being very reactive over proactive. And like I can already see so many benefits that could come from this practice.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, as you said, like, please connect. And yeah, if you want to know more about it, if you want to connect with different facilitators that operate different forms of breathwork as well, I'd love to put them in touch.
Awesome.
Mate,
before you go, I want to talk about a couple more things.
Yeah.
And because breathwork's one thing to create more energy and nourish the body and live a more fulfilling life, of course. But there's a couple other, there's another project you're heavily involved with. I touched on in the intro, which is the liqueur wellness business. So could you give us just a snapshot of what that is all about and perhaps why you started it, and then what some of these rehab practices might look like for people?
So liqueur wellness was created 2 years ago, just about. And the concept came about a year earlier. And I essentially was looking into alternate therapies, and I'm always going away from the conventional forms. Not that I've got anything wrong with those areas, they just haven't worked for me personally.
Yeah.
I had a huge knee injury that copped a lot of trauma around my ligaments, and I ruptured all 4 ligaments playing rugby league. And as a result, spent months and months in rehab and just found I could never get my leg back to where it was, my knee back before, I had the accident, I had the incident. And essentially, I started to dive into a few different practices, or let's call them therapies, cryotherapy, infrared, flotation, different forms of alternate therapies. And yeah, I found like I had huge bodily responses from it, like huge physiologically. And the recovery process for me when I was training, or when I was, let's say the float is something too that can be utilized as a recovery tool. It's got magnesium in it, so it's very good at relaxing the muscles, but also, healing the body and muscle recovery. So it is a mindfulness experience as well. You're in a sensory deprivation tank, and your two of your senses are shut off, essentially, your sight and your sound. And it allows you to have different chemical releases in the brain, and replicate sleep patterns. I think they did a study that for an hour in that tank was equivalent to about a 4-hour sleep.
Yeah, I think I've read that.
So huge if you've got sleep deprivation. But yeah, like things like the cryo was massive for me because I had a lot of swelling and inflammation around my knee. So that was something I used as a targeted treatment. But then I realized how much, the actual full body treatment does in terms of not just inflammation, in the sense of, improving your mood, so boosting your serotonin levels. They've used it in studies of depression, or clinical trials of depression. So yeah, cryotherapy, was something that's something I got into as well. And then the infrared saunas, I fell in love with those. I've kind of went away from the traditional saunas, realized how much more detoxification the body gets through using 3 infrared lights, the near, mid, and far infrared. I think it penetrates the skin 5 to 7 times deeper. It draws out more toxins, heavy metals in the body. It's just a deeper sweat, and you feel it. It's a 45-minute session. You go into a traditional sauna and it's like oppressive in there. It's like 15 minutes and you just lost a lot of fluid. Oh, look, I'm not saying they're not doing their job, but yeah, I feel like those 3 treatments in particular, those 3 recovery therapies was something that I was utilizing and getting great personal responses from. And I actually, I sat on it for a while, and I did a bit more research into some of the centres that started to come about in Sydney, across Australia. And I watched their progression, and a lot of them started to, especially the cryo places, started to just float. They were just floating their head above water. I think it's a new age technology, and not a lot of people know the information. There's not a lot of education around it. There wasn't a couple of years ago. So I wanted to apply something that people were familiar with and was popular. I have no idea about it, but I added a beauty section into liqueur. So we crossed over sports recovery and beauty services. So, and that just grew from there. We ended up, applying cosmetic injectables, facial, skin therapy. We went all the way actually to even applying massage and then IV drips as well. So essentially, just using the intravenous, it just bypasses the nutrients straight into the bloodstream, past the digestive system. So you're absorbing nutrients quicker. And yeah, I mean, like that, it is a luxury service because
if I'm in Bondi, next time I'm in Bondi, mate, I'm hitting you up and I'm going to book out 2 weeks holiday, just stay at that joint. That sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah,
I want to come out floating on a cloud. Yeah.
Yeah, you could. Actually, it was funny because during COVID, before we shut our business down, we had an 8-week layover where we had to close, and I literally wanted to get locked into liqueur. I was asking. I got a couple of other partners. Damien Cook from South, he's one of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's been great for us. And yeah, I kind of threw it to all the partners. They've all got kids and families. At the time, I was single and just I was like, sweet if I just stay in liqueur for 8 weeks. But yeah, we did, it was just, we actually managed to get through the hardest year of our life that year. And, the start of the year was bushfires, and that was just close to us, South Coast. So there was a lot of smoke that kind of drew up towards Cronulla. And I think if we survive that first year, we'll keep, we could survive anything. And it's going enormous now. So yeah, to all those listening, we'd love you to come and check it out. It's 493 Port Aiken Road, Carrying Bus South.
Awesome, mate. And how can we connect with you online? Are you on socials? I'll put the links in the description below. But
yeah, so my social media, I don't use Facebook, but social media, Instagram is Tommy Kerr. So TOMMYKERR 17. So you can connect with me there, and yeah, I've got plenty more to offer.
Awesome,
we'd actually one thing you'll see when you go into my social media is I transformed with another Wim Hof facilitator, the breathwork and cold therapy, and we started running retreats.
Okay.
This is something that came out of COVID, and obviously we couldn't travel interstate, but we set these retreats up, and they were located down the snowy mountains. And we would do 2 or 3 day complete, self-realization retreats where we would have, and it's all about taking you out of your comfort zone. So we would do cold exposure runs, hiking up Mount Kosciuszko in our shorts with no t-shirt, no thermals, nothing, using different breathwork strategies and techniques to keep you going. Plus you've got that kind of group camaraderie as well, the group, that team environment that kind of pushes you. We do breath work every day, and then we do cold plunging in the Threadbow River, which sometimes freezes over into ice, and we need to pick it to get people in there.
That sounds pretty awesome.
So yeah, we're going to run a few of those this year. I've got another business I'm launching, which I can't talk about just yet, but over the next few months could. It's just a different form of recovery, and it's like a liqueur on steroids pretty much.
We'll get you back on to talk about that, mate, when it's up and about.
Yeah, talk about that, definitely. And yeah, I'll be posting some stuff out about our retreats. So yeah, keep in the loop and contact us.
Awesome, mate. Well, like I said, really appreciate you carving out the time to chat with us today. So much stuff to unpack there. I feel like we just scratched the surface, but some really good surface level, tangible takeaways. I'd really encourage anyone listening to trial the breathwork and connect with Tommy to learn more. If you're not already, I've spoken about this on my program before today, but look, the cold showers as a start, and then looking into the cold exposure and other therapies, it really does make a world of difference. And, ultimately feeling good should be the North Star. So I feel like attacking the body and getting the physiology right you know, it obviously creates a sense of energy, but also just does so much for the mind as well. So, mate, next time we get you back, we'll dive even further, but really appreciate you chatting with us
Everyone
today.
always says you got to connect the mind to the body, but I believe in connecting the body to the mind. So, yeah, kick off, you know, even if it's just 3 rounds of Wim Hof in the morning and jumping into a 20, 30-second cold shower. Do that for a week. Promise you'll notice a difference.
That is a good challenge. My man. Thank you, Tommy.
All right, legend. Take care. Bye.